Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Holo Diner. Today, we're gonna tackle the strongest idol, Akai Hato, or Hachama. For this, the only thing that comes to mind from her first and third single is stuffed pork hearts. So let's get to cooking, right? Alright, let's start prepping. The first thing would be the pork heart, which is the main ingredient for this dish. And then for the stuffing, we're gonna make it with ground pork, garlic, onion, ginger, celery, spinach, and mushroom. Oh, and I forgot the breadcrumbs on when I was pointing out ingredients. And for this, choose whatever mushroom that you would like. So, first would be to mince all the ingredients. I think mince. Mince or chop, I don't know the difference. Alright, and then for the spinach, we're gonna keep it whole when we cook the stuffing. Alright, so I'm putting vegetable scraps in a baggie. On here is your own choice, but I'm using the leftover vegetable scraps to make my own vegetable broth for future use. You don't have to, but it's good not to waste like the carrot peelings, the ginger. Again, it's your own discretion if you want to keep a veggie scrap bag if you want to make your own vegetable broth broth. Yeah. Now you can see I just use a half an onion and then a small knob of ginger. For garlic, the same way. I will not keep the scraps, but it depends up to you as to how much garlic to use for this recipe. I like garlic, so I use at least 5 cloves. I think that's not enough though. Out around this part, while I was chopping the onion or mincing, I decided to just use like half of it since there was a lot. So I kept the other half and then I used it for something else, for other dishes. Again, I'm not doing any, or how should I put this? I'm not following a step-by-step recipe, but I just took a look at the ingredients and then just went from there. Yeah, so this dish is not exactly complicated, just a lot of prep work for the stuffing. And then on here, do the same for the celery. And then here I forgot to wash and clean the spinach. And then we'll be right back. And then where we wash the spinach. I won't use all of the spinach in the stuffing. I think I made too much stuffing, and then from there I use it for something different, for a different dish. So here we are before we cook our stuffing. The I think the proper term is mise en place. And then after that, we'll go to the stovetop to cook the pork and other things. So use a knob of butter. You can use oil. It's up to you what you want to use. Right. So once the butter is nice and warm, you add the ground pork, and we're gonna cook that until somewhat fully cooked before we add the other stuff. Alright, once the pork has a nice color to it, what I did here, I'm gonna remove it from the pan and put it on the side first. Yeah, I'm using the old um, soup bowl that I used for the raw pork, since it's just gonna go back into the pan again after we saute um, the veggies a little bit. Alright, once we remove the pork from the pan, we're gonna add the onion, ginger, and garlic into the pan, and then let it soak up some of the pork fat. I don't know how fatty the ground pork that I bought, but we're gonna let that sit there for a while. After the onion, garlic, and ginger has a nice color to it, after letting it sit roughly 5 minutes ish, I added the mushroom and the celery. Let the mushroom and celery cook with the onion, ginger, and garlic. So after having the celery onion sit a little while, I added the pork back to the pan. I don't know why the video cut out. It did not capture me putting back the pork in, but let the flavors get together. I have not added spices to this as of yet, but after that, we're gonna add the spinach and breadcrumbs before we season this stuffing. And then on here, I decided to just use half of the spinach rather than the entirety of the bundle. So after cooking down the spinach to remove the water content from it, I added a lot of black pepper. And then next, I added breadcrumbs before I seasoned everything with salt and other spices. So at this part, I added some more ground pepper, and then I added the roughly half a cup of breadcrumbs or whatever is left in the packaging. After which I started seasoning it with salt and then the herb mixture that I just copied from a recipe online, which is thyme, rosemary, marjoram, a little bit of dill, and some Italian seasoning, which with oregano and other spices. Feel free to use whatever spices that you would do. But on here, I realized that I under seasoned the stuffing. So be liberal with your seasoning if you decide to do stuffing. Okay, so cook it a little bit more, let the flavors meld together, and then after cooking it a little bit more, to put it in a bowl, and then to start prepping to stuff the pig hearts. Alright, so we're gonna set the stuffing aside, and then we're gonna work on the pork hearts. So, what we're gonna do first is gonna rinse it with cold water. After which, we're gonna cut off the white parts, the fatty tissue attached to the heart, before we stuff them with the porky goodness that we just made earlier. Right, for this, try to get as much of the fat or connective tissue trim off the heart before we stuff and cook the heart. After trimming off the fat or connective parts, we're gonna put the stuffing inside the heart as best as we can. So on here, before starting, I decided to put it in a separate bowl before I fill out the heart, just in case I don't use the rest of it, because I don't want to contaminate the cooked pork with the raw heart. And at first I start using a spoon to see if that would be good, but in the end I just decided to use my hands because it would be easier, and try to fill out all 4 chambers of the heart: the left and right, atrium and ventricle. Yeah, for this one, go ham in it however you want to, but make sure that try as much as possible to stuff as much meat as you can. Alright, after that, after stuffing your hearts, we're gonna transfer it to my brand new Dutch oven that I bought from Costco, and then we're gonna sear it first before we put it in the oven. Alright, make sure to put some oil first before searing both. Try to get a nice color on the pork hearts. So after searing majority of the heart sides, I decided to put the rest of the stuffing inside the Dutch oven, and then submerged it with some water and beef broth. Hopefully that would have included more flavor to it before we put it in a 350 degree oven for at least an hour. So, while the pork part, stuffed pork heart is braising in the oven, I decided, again, this is optional, to add a side dish, just so that it's just not pork heart. So on here, I cut some carrots and potatoes, and then I wash them. Before marinating them, I decided to dry them off a little bit. And then for this, just rough chop some potatoes and carrots. Doesn't matter which kind. And then I use some olive oil and salt, pepper, and rosemary. For what do you call this? Damn. For the spices. Then that's it. Put it in the oven as well. I overcook this. Usually it's only 30 to 45 minutes in the oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I should specify Fahrenheit, just because we're in the US. Alright, after being in the oven for an hour, we're gonna now cut it or slice it and then serve. Gonna transfer it to a different area first, or different plate, and then let's slice this stuffed pig heart and see how it turns out. Alrighty. And then this recipe actually turned out well, other than the fact that I did not season it properly. So you can either cut the pork heart in half first, and then stuff the stuffing, and then use twine when cooking, then remove the twine. But I just decided to stuff it all in. Next, and before we taste this, let us do gravy, wherein I just use the broth from the Dutch oven. I put some on a separate saucepan. And basically making gravy is just butter and flour. And that's it until it's thick and not smooth, since there's some ground pork and spinach in it. So it depends. If you just want to use a broth, that's up to you. So, yeah, so don't mind the mess from the flour. I use a strainer so that there's no clumps of flour in the gravy. So you just want it like that if you just want normal gravy. And then after which, so I tried this in 3 different styles. Just the pork heart with no sauce. The issue is I under-seasoned the stuffing. When making this, make sure to season the stuffing heavily on your spices of choice. Next, I tried it with just the broth that I cooked the pork heart in. It was better, but the best way that I felt was using gravy. The gravy from the pork broth for the added creaminess and flavor. Alright, and that does it for this episode of Holo Diner. I don't know. Again, title still title pending or subject to change dependingly. But I enjoyed doing this compared to the mooncake. Hopefully you guys enjoyed as well. Guys and gals, sorry. Enjoyed this episode, and hopefully it inspires you to cook different things as well. So, till next time, and advance or happy Halloween, which is, I think, somewhat perfect for this recipe to try out for the world's strongest idol, Hachima.